folks. I'm Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. We're going to be finishing Chapter 2 of Light on Life, an introduction to the Astrology of India. We've been rapping about the philosophy of Jyotish, which is what Chapter 2 of this book is all about. This is our last little subsection in this chapter. It's called Jyotish in Action. It's us kind of putting together everything that we've read so far in an applied way, and finally getting down to the nitty-gritty of what does our present conception of astrology and our application of it, what is it, what's it for, what does it mean in the context of how we would use it today. And the authors first talk about the fact that, drida means fixed karma, and it would be hard to predict all of a person's karmas just with the horoscope alone, because there's an oceanic underbelly of fixed sanchita karmas that are not even viewable. So I'm going to stop going by my own regard, and we're going to read the author's interpretation of what this is all about. They begin by saying, even an adept cannot predict the course of a human life from cradle to grave through examining the natal horoscope unless all the karmas indicated therein are drida karmas, which is very uncommon. Not all of the karmas you read are going to be fixed in this way. Many of them are going to be mutable. Natal astrology gauges prarabdha karma by constructing a snapshot of the heavens at the time and place of a birth, which is then interpreted to predict the course of that life, a life which should evolve along a totally predictable pattern if fate is in fact immutable. But this is rarely true in practice. A good Jyotishi makes predictions about configurations in the natal horoscope which indicate the presence of fixed karmas in one or many areas of life. This way, it's going to be a surefire indication that this is a fixed karma that is bound to be a part of this person's experience, when there's many confluent factors drumming on the same tune. One fundamental error that fledgling Jyotishis commonly make is to predict dire or wonderful results from a single bad or good influence in a horoscope. Fixed karmas exist only in those areas of life in which the several different astrological factors which signify those areas all confluently suggest the same sorts of results. Since drida, or fixed karma, is very difficult to transform, such predictions will usually be correct. Natal astrology can also indicate how long such drida karma will last, when it will be most and least active, and whether it will yield pleasurable or painful results. Predictions in those areas of life in which the natal horoscope shows drida adrida, or adrida karma, which is essentially less fixed karmas. These become, those predictions of that can be anything that can be predicted in things that have never necessarily been fixed or don't have that many confluent factors. These become progressively more tenuous as life progresses, because all the actions that have been performed after birth are transforming, positively or negatively, the potential results. In these areas, the Jyotishi employs prajna, horary astrology, to gauge the potential effects inherent in the kriyamana and agama karmas by casting a horoscope for the moment at which a question is actually asked, or at which the moment in which an event occurs. A horary horoscope thus gauges the accumulated influence of free will in one's life, up to the point of the reading. The information garnered in both horoscopes, the natal horoscope and the horary horoscope is then blended for the reading. A good Jyotishi, like a soothsayer, composes a well-tuned story for a client, a story which creates an image of reality as it was in the past, as it is at the time of the reading, and as it may become in the future according to the client's life goals. If, for example, the question is about marriage, and the natal horoscope indicates drida adrida, semi-fixed karma, then the horoscope, calculated for the moment the question is put to the astrologer, will reveal what energies have been activated by the individual with regard to marriage in the time between his or her birth and the asking of the question. This immediate moment. Why are you asking this question? What is the real intention behind it? Are you just lonely, or are you really prepared for the commitment that a love life in a marriage requires? As it happens, when a natal horoscope shows fixed karma in one area of life, the same sort of confluence of indications will usually be present when the same area is investigated via the horary horoscope. Right, they tend to just, what a coincidence, they tend to represent the same confluent emerging of themes. Once a conclusion is drawn about the nature of the karmas in the area of life under investigation, muhurta, electional astrology, is used to maximize the effectiveness of the akriyamana and agama karmas selected for use as remedies, since muhurta is an astrological method for optimizing free will. Now, nimitta, omenology, spontaneously enhances natal, horary, and electional astrology when they, due to karmic complexities, cannot provide the detail necessary for making effective decisions. That unforeseen developments can occur in life is accommodated philosophically through the notion of kripa, divine grace. In spite of all his disadvantages, a beggar can become a king if favored by grace for whatever reason, and kings can and do become beggars on falling from grace. Consideration of omens permits a Jyotishi to take the factor of grace or its lack into account when making an astrological interpretation of a life. The particular complexity of influences with which a Jyotishi must juggle when attempting to make a judicious evaluation of someone's karmas explains why Jyotish cannot be scheduled. And this is a quote here. Every Jyotishi is trying to play the game of God in aspiring to omniscience. That's a quotation of the author's Jyotish Guru. For God, this may be easy, but for us humans, with our limited brains, it is not. It requires effort, experience, intuition, and virtuous saintliness. If a Jyotishi can attain even a drop of the ocean of God's omniscience, that Jyotishi will be pursued by all and will not have to advertise for clients. Cool. That's the end of the quote. A good Jyotishi often says to a client, "Come back tomorrow, my mind is not right today." While a sensible client who wants a reliable reply will acquiesce, many clients today, driven by the force of their karmas, will insist that it be done there and then. If the client forces the Jyotishi to read at that moment, good results cannot be guaranteed. Mastery of all of Jyotish's limbs is thus essential for the correct and unfailing predictions that make one a daivajna, a knower of God's intentions, a daivajna, that's the word. Varaha Mihira, in his Brihat Samhita, chapter 2, verse 3, lists the qualities displayed by one who has become an expert at Jyotish. And the quote goes, "He must be pure, skillful, bold, eloquent, possessed of a ready wit, a knower of time and place, filled with equanimity, not timid in assembly, victorious in debate with other astrologers, expert, free from vices, well versed in palliative, preventative magic and bathing rituals, ever engaged in worshipping deities, vows, and penances, possessed of great and unusual power as a result of his achievements, and capable of answering questions and prescribing remedies." That's the end of the quote. Mastery of Jyotish occurs when all the 9 Caesars, the 9 grahas, come to life in the Jyotishi's consciousness, transforming these planets from mere symbols into living beings who, when pleased, can assist in the work of Jyotish. There's a deep running torrent of the willfulness of an astrologer's own karmas nowadays, especially in the capitalist schema of the Western world, for the astrologer to be impelled and compelled to keep the client here with me and giving me money. And so much of that is such a bastardized transliteration of what Jyotir is supposed to be, and is a incorrect and flawed path to trying to apply oneself to the consciousness which Jyotish really requires. It really just goes to show that this book and these authors give an important derivation on the true consciousness of the planets as living deities, a living consciousness which we as Jyotishis can be mutators for, organizers for, cheerleaders for, essentially. And that's true. Don't take that as a bad thing. It's true, because we have to humble ourselves before the planetary forces that exist within the client we are speaking to. We have to speak firmly our authority on the present karmas of this individual in order to be an authority on their karma. But we always have to remember that we are truly subservient to the divine will of absolute truth and consciousness, which is also nestled in our client. And therefore, that's why it's important that these authors have conceived of Jyotish as, that's quite the funny game and an important game. And it takes a certain consciousness to deal with it properly. And that's why they talk about that the mastery of Jyotish occurring when the 9 grahas come to life in the Jyotishi's consciousness, transforming the grahas from mere symbols into living beings who, when pleased, can assist in the work of Jyotish, the science of the light. Fun stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Very important bearings and graspings for any fledgling apprentice in the path of astrology. That's why I've wanted to give this book, is that it's got so many nuts and bolts, philosophical, kind of, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's like in a story where the narrative plugs a little glimmer into something that's going to happen in the plot line later. And then it happens in the plot line. What is that word? I can't think of it for some reason. But, those little clues given at the start of a novel that become very profound, and you see, that's why they talked about that at the start of the novel. So what these authors are doing here as well. They're giving us key little neuroprogramming, philosophical gemstones, which we might not understand now, but if we keep them in our pocket, we'll come to later in our astrology career and say, that was why they told me to do this in this way. Have this concept of astrology and consciousness. But I digress. That was the end of our second chapter of Light on Life. Stay tuned, folks. If you keep watching my channel, as we go along, we'll delve further into the rest of this book. Next will be chapter 3, and that's when we'll be getting into the essential astronomy, the breakdown of the zodiac, the history of it, the grahas, the planets, the houses, what they all mean, and how they are used in the science of Jyotish once again. So thanks for watching, folks. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. Feel free to let me know if you like the series so far. Drop me a comment. And keep your eyes peeled, because chapter 3 will be coming along anytime, probably within a month or more or less of the time that this chapter is posted on YouTube. Thanks for watching, folks, and I'll see you on the flip side.